2. And welcome back to the Wayniac Nation fantasy football YouTube video thing show. It's week 15. If you're like Fiamano and myself, you are still alive in your fantasy football playoffs. If you're like Dunton, well, you still know what you're talking about. You just got the wrong end of the stick. Welcome back for another week. I'm your host, Wayne Cavati. Another good week I had in the starts column. In the sits column, it was a little bit embarrassing, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Joining me from the snowed-in venue of the New York State is the one and only Fanduel Fee. Fiamano, how are you?
I'm good. It's been 4 hours since the snow started, and we already have 6 inches on the ground. It's going to be an interesting day tomorrow.
Yeah. Might make for an interesting week and in football, if you would. And coming from North Carolina, and he has to go immediately get online for a light show as soon as this podcast is over. Dunton, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was enjoying watching you two in the playoffs. Well, not you, Wayne, you had a bye, but Fiamano's team in the playoffs. And Fiamano, way to squeak out another close game.
This week without a kicker.
I did do it without a kicker. And man, am I lucky.
Oh, man, that was intense.
Well, last week, if you remember, someone told you, we're getting down to the nitty gritty, but I told you that if there is 1 week to pick the Cowboys in Survivor, it was last week. And in the words of Fiamano, they played their Super Bowl. They won against the Bengals in a blowout. Other Survivor picks, I mean, it's just tough at this point. Dunton, you got betrayed by the Panthers, but we look good in our picks overall. So why not?
Not a betrayal for a team that you don't really enjoy anyway.
Right. So we're in week 15, keeping track of our picks throughout the year. There is not a whole lot left to go with here. So let's just jump into Big Larry's locks of the week. I'll get it rolling. I haven't taken the Colts. They're playing the Texans. I'll take anyone who's playing the Texans, and I'm a Texans fan. So I'm going to tell you the Colts. I think I pretty much like them against the spread because if you saw the Texans last week, they've given up. They're not a football team. So whatever that spread winds up being, it's probably going to be about a touchdown. I think you're safe. I really like Washington football team this week. I like the Cardinals. I think that Murray looked like he was back and their defense looked very good against the Giants. And I mean, after the Bengals couldn't do anything against the Dallas Cowboys defense, you just got to like the Steelers, even if they wind up giving 14 points by Monday night. I think they're a pretty safe bet. Fee, what do you got?
So surprisingly enough, I have not taken the Rams yet in Survivor. I mean, I lost 2 weeks ago, but going back and looking at all
just the teams that we've picked,
I have not picked this team. So I'm looking at the Rams playing the Jets.
Nice.
I'm hoping that's probably going to be a popular pick.
Yeah, if they're left.
Probably be right. That should probably be a lock for you. The spread, I'm also looking at Washington against Seattle, plus 5.5 I saw. And I also like the Eagles this week, plus 6.5 against Arizona. They might not win the game, but I like the Eagles getting the points. I know you just mentioned the Cardinals giving the points. I think I like the Eagles getting the points.
I like it. I like going head to head with the.
It is fun.
With the Fanduel Fee. Dutton, what are you looking at?
Similar to Fiamano, the Panthers betraying me hurt, obviously, but we knew that we were just trying to help people win their Survivor pool. And I have not picked the Bucs this year. Looking back at our picks,
nice.
That's my team. So I think the Bucs are a lock this week against the Falcons. I actually kind of enjoy the fact that they get to finish 2 out of their last 3 games against the Falcons. I think that could be good for the Bucs. Also, continuing trends, I think all 3 of us are in on the underdog Washington football team this week. So I like them against the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks win the game, but I think Washington keeps it close. I don't think 5.5 or 5, I've seen it as low as is going to be. I think it's a close game, field goal maybe at the end. I also like the 49ers getting the 2.5 against the Cowboys coming off their Super Bowl win against the hapless Bengals.
That's a good point.
So
I was looking at that, and I was just looking at the history of that series, and the Cowboys own it over the last 10 years, and I'm just like, something in this crazy NFL year. I just want to stay away from that game. But
yeah,
I did look at
I
it.
hear you.
It seemed odd.
It is odd. It's just weird. The whole thing is weird. I was like, you know what? Why not?
And let's give a shout out to the old Wayniac Nation blog, faithful Nick the Greek, who is in his survivor pool this week with 11 people remaining. We are in week 15. So hopefully, Nick, you're watching, you're listening, and you win. And if you don't, you never saw this show. It's time to move on to the next segment of the show, which is becoming quite popular for you daily fantasyers. Before we get into the weekly picks, of course, we have to turn to Fanduel Fee, but let's remind you to head on over to Ball Street Trading, where you can really play fantasy sports like Wall Street, and they trade anything and everything. The other day on their Instagram page, I saw they were doing chess. So if you have a hankering and a fix that you need to fill, head on over to Ball Street.
Gambit.
It's completely free. The cash and prizes are not free. They're very real. So head on over there. Tell them we sent you. That being said, Fanduel Fee. A lot of interesting matchups this week. What do you see in the world of your action stacks of the week?
It is an interesting week this week. There aren't, in my opinion, a whole lot of quarterbacks to go after this week. So you're going to pay a little high for them if you go with one of the guys I mentioned here. I do have a lot of running backs and receivers and just 2 tight ends for you. So let's get started. Quarterbacks, I'm looking at Lamar playing Jacksonville. He's 8,200. So you're going to pay up for him, but I like him this week. They don't really throw the ball a whole lot, and Lamar runs a ton, so Jacksonville probably is going to, have a run for their money here. I also like Kyler Murray playing Philadelphia. He did look better against the Giants. He did rush, I think, the ball 10 times, which is the total he had the last 2 weeks prior to that. So he's probably feeling a little bit better. If Philly's secondary is as good as they've been playing, maybe he'll run a little more. He's up at 8,000. I also really like Tom Brady against Atlanta this week. We've been picking on Atlanta all year long, and with Ronald Jones out and Fournette in, I don't know how much they actually run the ball. He's at 7,900. And in the same game, I like Matt Ryan coming back the other way. He's down at 7,400, although I do like Brady better. At running backs, I'm looking a few places. There's a couple of value guys. There's also very expensive guys, and there's a couple of middle of the road guys. So you got options. Derrick Henry is playing Detroit. He should just run all over them. If Stafford doesn't play, who knows what the Lions' offense is going to look like. Tennessee may just destroy them and run the ball the whole game. But you're going to pay up for him because he's 10,200.
Wow.
But he might. Jonathan Taylor's playing Houston. He's at 7,400. He had a really good game last week. I know in the news their coach said that they're going to ride the hot hand still, but really Jonathan Taylor should be that guy. David Montgomery is playing Minnesota. He's at 7,300. Another guy who had a ridiculous game last week, and Minnesota's, a terrible defense also, so he should have another good game.
He's over 23 points his last 3 weeks. He's a guy you got to go with now.
Yep. Miles Sanders, and he's still only 7,300.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders is playing Arizona. He had a ridiculous game last week. And I know that a lot of people are not sold on how Jalen Hurts is going to do and how Miles Sanders is going to do. But I think with Jalen Hurts' running ability, it opens up holes for Miles Sanders with the RPO. And Arizona's defense isn't anything special. I know that they looked really good against the Giants, but that's not saying much. and he's down at 6,800. In the same range, you got Cam Akers going against the Jets. And again, another guy who went absolutely ballistic last week, playing another really bad defense. And he's down at 6,700. Two other guys, value plays I'm looking at. I got Dobbins going against Jacksonville at 5,900. I know he's in a timeshare, so it's not exactly a safe play, but Jacksonville's bad, and the Ravens run the ball a ton. And my last running back is Jeff Wilson, with Mostert most likely out, playing Dallas, and he's down at 5,800. My wide receivers, I'm looking at A.J. Brown in that Detroit game. He's up at 8,300. Allen Robinson playing Minnesota at 7,300. Chris Godwin, you could stack him up with Brady. He's playing Atlanta. He's at 7,200, and I do like him better than Evans this week. Cooper Kupp, 7,100, playing the Jets. Michael Thomas, who has been consistent, although he hasn't scored any touchdowns with Taysom Hill, playing Kansas City, so that might be somewhat of a shootout type of game. He's down at 6,000, and he's Michael Thomas. But he's getting looks from Taysom Hill, so it might be hard not to play him at 7,000. Brandon Ayuk playing Dallas in that San Francisco game. I like him a lot. He's gotten tons of looks also. He's at 6,900. Terry McLaurin, I don't care who his quarterback is. He's playing Seattle, and he's at 6,900. I like Russell Gage this week. I don't think Julio Jones is going to play. Playing Tampa, you could, again, stack him with Ryan if you went that way. He's at 5,700. And I really like Michael Pittman this week. I know T.Y. Hilton has been going nuts, but Houston is bad.
They're very bad.
To go around. And he's down at 5,500. And he's had five catches for about 40 or 50 yards the last 2 weeks when Hilton has been going nuts. And my two tight ends, I like Mark Andrews at Jacksonville if you want to pay up at 6,800. And my value guy at tight end is Higbee playing the Jets for the Rams. He's down at 5,700.
Yeah. Higbee's a gamble because he's hit or miss, but against the Jets, I think this is when you take the gamble,
think
especially at his value. All right. So thank you, as always, Fanduel Fee. We know the work you put into that. Let's take our expertise to your fantasy football playoffs. Playoffs?
Playoffs?
It's week 15. If you're still playing, you're in the playoffs. Every move you make is, well, it means something, right? You can win or lose with any pick you make. So last week we did really well. All three of the quarterbacks we told you, Tannehill, Herbert, and Rodgers, put up some serious points. All three of the running backs we told you, Montgomery, McKissick, and Carson put up points for you. Fiamano and I got burned severely on Miles Sanders, but in our league, Fiamano started Miles Sanders, and it's probably what propelled him to a victory. And surprisingly, we did relatively well on tight ends this week because tight ends was a relatively, you take away the Kelseys, you got a relatively low scoring position. So we got you guys that were towards the top of the pack in those departments. So who do we have for you this week? We will start with quarterback. And Dunton, why don't you get the ball rolling?
Yeah, so I mean it's playoffs, so obviously your Rodgers, your Josh Allens, those type of guys are playing, right? 10 team, 12 teams, I'm sure. But pay attention to Brady. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people are still on the Brady train, but I think now's the time to play Brady, playing the Falcons. And then Justin Herbert against the Raiders is another interesting matchup. I think the Raiders have proven that their defense is porous.
Yeah. Fee, who do you like?
I like Kyler Murray this week playing Philadelphia. He looked a whole lot better last week against the Giants. And I think that as long as he's running more, I think he's got a real good chance against Philly's defense.
I agree. I'm going to agree with Dutton on Brady. You got to start him against the Falcons, not only because of what we've seen from the Falcons defense, but this is a big game for the Bucs. They need to win. Rojo is on the COVID protocol. I haven't seen if he's positive or if he's just in contact. If he's in contact, he has a chance to play at least. But
it's an interesting mix, right? Because he had surgery. So did he fail his COVID test when he had surgery on his finger? Like nobody's telling us that. So it'd be interesting to find out.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think Brady is a start if you have him. I also like Goff this week. I mean, come on, you got to like any quarterback going against the Jets. Your only concern there is that they may jump out to a ridiculous lead and then hand the ball off to Akers and Henderson for the rest of the entire second half. But I think you got to start him. Moving on to running backs, I'll get the ball rolling. I like whoever Washington starts at running back this week. Gibson didn't play last week, but if he's healthy, I mean, he's proven he's a go-to guy this year, and McKissick has proven he's a decent fill-in. The Seahawks are not necessarily good against the run, so I like him. Dunton, how about you?
Fiamano mentioned him in his daily fantasy. Jonathan Taylor against the bad Texans defense.
Yeah, you gotta love him. That's a wise one. And then Fiamano, I'm intrigued by your pick.
Yeah. So, actually, before I get to that, just so you know, I don't think Gibson's going to play this week.
Yeah, it didn't sound very promising.
So I'm going Jeff Wilson. I mentioned him earlier, and he's playing Dallas. But he's the most logical choice in this backfield. Dallas is bad. He's gotten 33 touches in the last 3 games, so he's averaging 11 touches a game. The other guys in that backfield have been non-existent, and he's had 19 touches for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns when Jerick McKinnon was active in Week 7. So I just think that Jeff Wilson, as long as Mostert is out, and I do think that he will be, should have a very solid game against a very porous Cowboys defense.
Yeah. Let's move on to a receiver. Dutton, why don't you get us started?
So last week he was my sit, Robert Woods. I said it was Cooper Kupp's turn. I was right about that. This week it's Robert Woods' turn. So Robert Woods is your start.
Nice. Fee.
I like Terry McLaurin against Seattle. I know that he's not had a couple of 2 straight weeks. He hasn't had too good of a game, but Seattle's defense isn't good. And I don't know if Alex Smith is going to be back or if it's going to be Dwayne Haskins, but McLaurin's too good to be held back for 3 straight weeks. So I'm going with McLaurin. And I had another note here. I like Russell Gage going against Tampa.
Yeah, he's sneaking in there, especially with Julio.
As long as Julio's out.
Right. I'm going with A-Rob. I love Allen Robinson, kind of a strategy of mine, and we always joke about it for at least 15 years now, and I have no problem saying it on the show, is I call them the Tim Brown guys. And you'll never see me go for the big heyday knockout wide receiver. I go for the guys that it doesn't matter who throws them a football. They get open underneath. They'll get 8 to 10 receptions. Sometimes it's 60 yards and a touchdown. Sometimes it's 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. Either way, Allen Robinson is getting you points with some of the worst quarterbacks in football throwing to him. This guy is, in my mind, like if he was, if he was on the Chiefs, forget it. We're talking about one of the best wide receivers in football.
Oh, for sure.
Proven that he is a guy that rain or shine, backup quarterback, rookie quarterback, whoever it is under center, he is going to make sure he's open and catching the ball. And going against the Vikings, he's going to catch the ball. So he's my start of the week for you at wide receiver. Moving on to tight end, I told you to sit him last week, and he got a whopping 2.6 points. But I like Evan Ingram this week against Cleveland. Cleveland's softer against the tight end, and he's proven all year that against softer defenses against the tight end is when he shows up. And I think he shows up this week. Fee, you mentioned yours in your value picks. What do you got?
Yeah, I did. I like Tyler Higbee going against the Jets. Gerald Everett is there. I'm not sure how healthy he is, but I feel like the Rams should be able to throw the ball, and Goff spreads it around usually, and he's definitely got a shot for getting in the end zone. So I'm going to go with Higbee.
Yeah, Dutton, what are you thinking?
So this is against everything I normally would say about this combination, but I am all in on Robert Tonyan, the Green Bay Packers tight end. And Aaron Rodgers historically has messed up tight ends, but I think he has found one he likes. Yeah. And if you want to know why Aaron Rodgers likes Robert Tonyan, just go on YouTube and watch him block 3 guys with 1 block. It was amazing.
And he doesn't drop the ball.
And he doesn't drop the ball. He gets 5 or 6 looks a game, and he catches every one of them.
Yeah.
And he finds the end zone if he gets enough touches. So, yeah, I think he's a good – and tight end is such a weak position this year. So, if you can get 10 points at tight end, it's a huge find, right? I mean,
it's like a 40-point day from a quarterback.
Exactly. So, yes, I like Robert Tonyan against a Panthers defense that made the Broncos look like a playoff team last week. So,
yeah. All right. Well, let's move over to the sits. I'll get it rolling with quarterback. I think I was going to say Hurts to sit. He had a pretty solid week last week, but I can't see anyone starting him in their fantasy football playoffs unless they're in a world of hurt. So if you're starting him, you're in trouble anyway. But I am going to tell you to sit Tua because I have seen he was rostered last week in several games. And against the Patriots, I don't know that Dolphins will lose against the Patriots. I don't know that Tua can't win the game, but we're talking fantasy, and I don't think he puts up the numbers that you need from fantasy. Fee.
I'm staying in that same game. I'm going with Cam Newton. Miami's defense is very good and
very good.
Has showed us absolutely zero this year. So I'm sitting Cam this week.
Yeah, I mean, he might not even be playing by the second half if he comes out like last week. Dunton.
So you guys are definitely digging deep in the depth charts. So if you're that team that somehow you made the playoffs and these are your quarterbacks, listen to those two. I'm going to tell people to sit Russell Wilson this week. And it's a hard sit in your semifinals, possibly, or the first round of your playoffs, depending on how your league works. But he is going against a defense that is out of its mind right now.
Yeah.
And his offensive line is not strong. That defensive front of Washington is going to give him fits. I see this going very similar to the way the Giants game went. I don't think the Seahawks lay an egg like they did against the Giants. I think they actually win this game, but I don't think it's because Russell Wilson throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And if you're trying to get into the finals, possibly of your fantasy playoffs, if you have a better option just this week, it's hard. It's a matchup thing, right? It's not that I'm telling you to sit Russell Wilson all the time, but I just think this matchup this weekend is a tough one. If you are banking on a lot of points from Russell Wilson to win your game, you might be in trouble.
Yeah, I hope you're right because I'm playing against him. And I think you're right. I looked at that matchup. Washington's number 2 fantasy-wise against the quarterback. But at the end of the day, I can't see how a team sits Russell Wilson. I agree with you on paper. Statistically, he is the sit of the week.
Right.
But I just can't see how someone, unless you have Mahomes and Wilson.
Right. I mean, and if you're, absolutely. Like I said, if Russell Wilson is your first choice and you're looking at, an injured Daniel Jones or a Cam Newton, no, play Russell Wilson. But, if you have Russell Wilson and an Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen as a backup, then you may want to look at your backup in that situation.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
Dutton, why don't you stay with, I still can't believe it, but I had this conversation the other day. In the playoffs, probably the number 4 or number 5 round pick overall, Dutton, who you sitting?
Yeah, with Zeke. I mean, why are people still playing him? Why?
He's not startable. He's not. Fee, who do you like? Or not like, I should say. We're in sits.
I do not like Chris Carson this week for the same reasons Dunton mentioned about Russell Wilson playing Washington's defense. I know they're better against the pass than they are against the run, and maybe Seattle runs the ball a little more. But I don't know how Seattle's going to do a whole lot against this team. I don't know that Washington's going to do a whole lot against Seattle. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting game for sure, but Chris Carson's my sit this week.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you to sit the Fresh Prince of Edwards-Helaire. I don't trust him against that Saints defense. They're really good against the run. He's struggled against good defenses. I mean, he's a rookie. He's having a great year, but he's struggled against good defenses. They showed last week that they'll hand the ball off to Tyreek Hill. They'll get him involved anyway they can. And Mahomes has plenty of weapons that if the run game shut down, he can come out firing. And I just don't think if you could bench him again, he's another first rounder. And we're talking about a year where there's legitimately 3 or 4 first rounders that you can't play in the semifinals of your playoffs this year. And I have one of them on my team, Josh Jacobs. I
Yeah.
mean, he's not startable right now. I probably will start him, but that's another story for another time. I'm benching Tyler Lockett at wide receiver. If you haven't noticed, there's a pattern, and we all seem to like the Washington football team defense. Fee, who are you off of this week?
I'm off of Kiki Cutie. Brandon Cooks is going to be back for Houston, and I don't know that Houston's going to do anything against Indianapolis's defense.
Well, I told you last week on our text, the ultimate problem with Kuti is that he sucks. So
right.
it doesn't
He
matter
did
really
say
who he's playing. But he did get a touchdown last week. I'll give him that.
But I, especially with Cooks being back, I think Cutie is a sit this week.
Dutton.
I am sitting Robbie Anderson. I think the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field on Saturday night is going to be a lot for Teddy ball game and the Panthers offense. I think the Packers are now looking at the fact that they have a first round bye and the playoffs could be going through Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers is not giving that up. You both know it. The fact that they will not have to leave Lambeau Field until they possibly fly to Tampa to play the Super Bowl, he is all in on that. So I don't think Teddy Bridgewater will be very welcomed at the Lambeau Field this weekend, and therefore I think Robbie Anderson will have a tough time against the Packers defense.
I'm going to have a tough time in the playoffs this week.
Moving on, wrapping it up with the tight end. I'm going to sit I'm going back to Jasicki. He's had a couple good weeks. That Patriots defense, they're just too solid. Dutton.
I'm sitting Dallas Goedert against the Cardinals. You guys mentioned it before. That Arizona defense is looking better, and I think Jalen Hurts, there's film on him now playing a whole game. So I think the Cardinals adapt to that.
I agree. And then Fee, going with the man who owns the position. Who are you sitting this week?
I'm sitting TJ out.
Oh, he's going to be so mad at us.
I know. Listen, if Stafford doesn't play,
no, that's valid.
You're right.
I don't know how you go with them. I mean, Tennessee's defense is okay. They're probably better than people think, unless they get out to like some huge lead, which is absolutely possible, where they just sit back on defense and let them get some garbage time. I just think that Hawkinson's probably a decent sit this week.
The other side of that, too, Fee, though, kind of jumping on what you said, is they get out to a huge lead, then Derrick Henry just runs the ball, and Detroit never touches it again either, right?
Yep. That is right.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you as always for tuning in. Look, we're coming up to the off season. We have a whole bunch of ideas to keep rolling every week. So we're going to have some questions for you. Make sure you check over to our Instagram page, Wayniac_Nation_podcast_page, because we're going to start posting questions about biggest busts this year, biggest disappointments, biggest surprises, rookies, and all that stuff. And we're going to have shows dedicated to them position by position and break it all down. But we're going to want to hear from you and see what you guys think as well. We'll be coming at you next week, even though it's the holidays, because we film on Wednesday night. And that being said, we wish everyone a happy Hanukkah and hope everyone's staying happy, healthy, and safe for this holiday season. Thank you.
And warm up there in the north.
And warm up there in the north, Fiona. Thank you as always for joining us. We're seriously, you guys have been great. It's been a heck of a first season for us, and we're having a blast. So happy holidays all. Have a good night.